Sometimes box office failure isn't the end, it's the beginning of a legacy. The 1950s were filled with daring films that crashed on release, only to rise later as cult classics. These 15 underrated flops didn't just underperform, they redefined noir, bucked Hollywood norms, and in one shocking case, toppled a studio. From broken bank accounts to bold filmmaking, here are the 15 most underrated flops of the 50s. Number 3, it shattered everything. Woman on the Run. At the time of release, Woman on the Run was just another crime thriller that failed to generate studio buzz or audience turnout. But underneath its cold reception lay something extraordinary. A noir that handed the narrative reins to a woman. Anne Sheridan plays the estranged wife of a murder witness who vanishes into the fog-drenched streets of San Francisco. Rather than run from danger, she pursues it, evolving from bitter bystander to hard-boiled hero. Shot guerrilla style on real streets and ending at the now-lost Playland amusement park, this film is steeped in eerie realism. The sardonic banter, penned in part by an uncredited Ross Hunter, slices deeper with every word. Sadly, Universal didn't market the film properly, shelving it quickly. The original negative was lost in a fire, and only in 2015 did restoration efforts return this forgotten gem to the spotlight. For decades, it was a noir lost to fog. Now, it stands in defiance of time and trends. The Prowler. When Dalton Trumbo was blacklisted, he adopted a pseudonym to write The Prowler, a film that crept into theaters and quietly disappeared. Audiences didn't know what to do with it. The plot, about a morally bankrupt cop manipulating a lonely woman, was too bold, too unsettling. But that's exactly what makes it unforgettable. Van Heflin sheds his nice guy image for something grotesque, a man of the law who exploits trust and vulnerability. Director Joseph Losey casts suburban homes in terrifying shadows, with clinking milk bottles and flickering blinds turning comfort into menace. The finale, set in a half-built ghost town, feels like a desert purgatory. Trumbo's words drip with paranoia and betrayal, but 1950s viewers weren't ready. The film tanked, critics balked, and it slipped out of memory. Today it feels ahead of its time, confronting abuse of power and female entrapment. Its failure wasn't artistic, it was cultural, and in that failure lies its modern relevance. The Crimson Kimono. Sam Fuller didn't play by the rules, and The Crimson Kimono paid the price. A romantic triangle featuring an Asian American lead was taboo in 1950s America. Audiences and exhibitors shied away. But Fuller's noir wasn't just about solving a murder. It was about dismantling prejudice. Detectives navigate LA's Little Tokyo through parades, strip clubs, and jazz bars. But the real tension brews between love and loyalty. James Shigeta's groundbreaking lead role was too progressive for its time. Critics dismissed it as too political, but Fuller insisted on raw truth over comfort, shooting with handheld realism and casting locales to keep it grounded. The marketing couldn't hide the controversy, and box office returns reflected backlash. Yet today, The Crimson Kimono is hailed as a pioneering work of inclusive noir. Fuller's failure was America's discomfort, but as tides turned, his so-called flop became a torchbearer. Crime Wave, lean, mean, and dumped by Warner Brothers, with barely a whisper. Crime Wave is a stripped-bare noir that values tension over polish. Directed by André de Toth, it follows 3 ex-cons scrambling through the underbelly of Los Angeles while a snarling detective, played by Sterling Hayden, watches with disdain. The locations are real: gas stations, parking lots, cheap apartments, and they drip with desperation. De Toth used handheld cameras and natural lighting, echoing a documentary style that made audiences uneasy. The real LAPD even helped Hayden rehearse, adding an uncanny authenticity. But Warner wanted glossy escapism, not grim reality. They buried the film in second-run slots. Over time, though, critics like Martin Scorsese revived it as a blueprint for gritty realism. Its so-called failure became its superpower, influencing generations of crime cinema. Sometimes a whisper turns into a roar 50 years later. Cry Danger. Dick Powell's transition from crooner to cynic found a near-perfect vessel in Cry Danger, but RKO buried it in a crowded release slate. The film is razor-sharp, unfolding in trailer parks and skid row dives where the American dream has gone to rot. Powell, fresh from San Quentin, isn't looking for redemption, just revenge. Screenwriter William Bowers peppers the script with acidic one-liners, each delivered with bruised charm. The film subverts expectations, trading the glamour of noir penthouses for grimy bars and cramped trailers. But critics didn't know what to do with it. It lacked polish, they said. It lacked stars, they claimed. What it had was bite and authenticity. A fun production tidbit? Powell accidentally broke his co-star's nose in a fight scene, and they used the take. It bombed. But in the noir canon, Cry Danger Now stands tall as a diamond in the gutter, too real to be embraced in its time, too good to be forgotten. DOA. Imagine walking into a police station not to report a crime, but to declare your own murder. That's the electrifying opening of DOA, a film that should have dominated the box office. Instead, it limped into theaters with little promotion and stiff competition. Edmund O'Brien plays Frank Bigelow, a man poisoned with a luminous toxin who has just 48 hours to find out who killed him. The film races across San Francisco and Los Angeles with handheld chaos and jazzy paranoia. Director Rudolph Maté gambled on location shooting, something studios avoided due to cost and logistics. But that decision gave the film a raw documentary edge no backlot could match. One jazz club scene, shot to mirror Bigelow's spiraling mental state, still feels experimental today. Audiences of the time didn't know what to make of it. A noir told almost entirely in flashback with a dead man as narrator? Too weird, too bleak. It faded until later. Generations saw the brilliance hiding in the shadows. What was once a flop is now canon. The Sniper. Long before the term serial killer entered the pop lexicon, the sniper aimed its sights at a deeply disturbed soul hidden in plain sight. Arthur Franz plays a laundry pressman whose hatred for women boils over into rooftop executions. Director Edward Dmytryk, fresh off the Hollywood blacklist, helmed the film with a mix of pseudo-documentary realism and psychological dread. Stanley Kramer produced it with a social agenda in mind, pushing for empathy over horror. But 1950s audiences weren't ready to empathize with a killer, nor were they prepared for POV rifle scope shots and manhunts shot on real San Francisco rooftops. The film's plea for mental health reform was ahead of its time, too ahead, in fact. The box office returns were dismal. Critics dismissed it as cold and clinical. But viewed today, The Sniper feels like a chilling prophecy of the true crime age. A failed film? Maybe then. A necessary one? Absolutely. The Narrow Margin. 71 minutes, one train, zero escape. That's The Narrow Margin, a masterclass in noir economy that should have launched a franchise, or at least a frenzy. Instead, it was shelved, delayed, and released without fanfare. Charles McGraw plays a rough-edged cop, escorting a mob witness cross-country. But everyone on board might be a threat. Shot on a mock train car mounted on hydraulic jacks and rocked by crew members for realism, the film is a pressure cooker on wheels. Director Richard Fleischer makes every corridor feel like a trap, every face a lie. There's even a mirror gag that still stumps first-time viewers. But budget issues and poor studio confidence stalled its momentum. RKO sat on it for months, releasing it quietly. It fizzled, but critics rediscovered it decades later, praising its taut suspense and inventive camera work. Today, The Narrow Margin is often imitated but rarely equaled, a flop that outran its own era. 99 River Street. John Payne had been Hollywood's golden boy in musicals and comedies. Then came 99 River Street, a dark, sweaty dive into betrayal and brutality that no one expected from him, or wanted. The movie tanked, plain and simple. Payne plays a washed-up boxer turned cabbie framed for his cheating wife's murder. The film drips with noir grit, sweat, blood, neon puddles, all captured by cinematographer Franz Planer like fragments of a shattered dream. Director Phil Carlson pushed the actors hard. Real boxers choreographed the fights. The dialogue smolders. Evelyn Keyes, known for ingenue roles, goes full chameleon as a struggling actress who risks everything to help. But it came out at a time when audiences wanted Technicolor comfort, not black and white despair. It was ignored, then forgotten. Today, its realism feels raw and modern. Once a misfire, now a knockout. Pushover. Fred MacMurray had already danced with the devil in Double Indemnity, but in Pushover, he leans even further into moral collapse. This time, he's a cop watching a gangster's girlfriend, only to fall for her and plan a double cross. The girlfriend? A 21-year-old Kim Novak in her hypnotic debut. Director Richard Quine drenches the film in post-war paranoia, humming fridges, ticking wall clocks, the eerie silence of mid-century suburbia. The suspense doesn't come from gunshots. It comes from glances, whispers, and slow blinks. But Columbia Pictures fumbled the release, unsure whether to sell it as noir or a romance. Critics focus more on Novak's inexperience than the film's chilly brilliance. It underperformed, quietly disappearing. Yet today, it's seen as Novak's first real blueprint. Her cool aloofness, later perfected in Vertigo, started here. Anne McMurray, never more haunted. Pushover failed because it asked too much of 1950s audiences to sympathize with the damned. While the City Sleeps, a Fritz Lang film starring Vincent Price, Dana Andrews, and Ida Lupino sounds like a surefire hit. But while the City Sleeps slipped under the radar, too dark, too cynical, and too real for post-war audiences craving clean-cut heroes, the film juggles two horrors: a lipstick killer haunting the streets, and the corporate backstabbing inside a media empire racing to report it first. Lang plays the newsroom like a snake pit, pitting egos against justice. The film's breakneck editing, particularly during the phone call montages, is almost musical. Critics didn't get it. Studios didn't push it. It faded. But beneath the newsroom, noir lies a brutal commentary on how fear sells. Lang's message? The killer isn't just outside. It's in the headlines, in the ratings, in us. In the age of clickbait and 24/7 news, this flop looks more like a prophecy. Riot in Cell Block 11. Shot inside Folsom Prison with real inmates as extras, Riot in Cell Block 11 had grit in its bones. But audiences weren't lining up to see reform-minded cinema in the mid-50s. Produced by Walter Wanger after his own prison stint, and directed by Don Siegel with kinetic urgency, the film explored the humanity of convicts and the brutality of the system. Neville Brand, a real-life ex-con and Dibsitui Fitizi hero, anchors the story with terrifying sincerity. The production had no frills. Handheld shots raced through barred hallways. Real guards stood just off camera. Despite critical acclaim, the film was too raw for box office gold. It got buried. But decades later, filmmakers from Scorsese to Soderbergh cite it as a turning point. A box office failure, yes, but an artistic revolution inside concrete walls. His Kind of Woman, the film that destroyed RKO. No film on this list crashed and burned with such spectacular fallout as His Kind of Woman. What began as a lean noir starring Robert Mitchum and Jane Russell spiraled into a Frankenstein's monster of reshoots, budget explosions, and studio chaos, all under the erratic command of Howard Hughes. Initially directed by John Farrow, the film told a tight, moody story. A gambler lured to a Mexican resort as part of a mob plot, only to fall for a sultry lounge singer. Mitchum smoldered, Russell sparkled. Then came Hughes. Unhappy with the tone, he brought in director Richard Fleischer for extensive reshoots, complete with a swashbuckling climax featuring Vincent Price as a Shakespeare-quoting ham wielding a hunting rifle. It turned noir into camp, art into absurdity. Hughes demanded endless retakes of Russell's close-ups, driving the budget up by over $1 million, unheard of at the time. Studio morale plummeted. Release delays drained marketing momentum. When it finally hit theaters, critics were baffled by the tonal chaos. Audiences stayed away. RKO, already weakened by mismanagement, never recovered. Insiders say His Kind of Woman was the final nail in RKO's coffin, a glamorous disaster, a noir mutating into madness. It was a film with too many voices, too many visions, proof that even stars and money can't save a story without direction. One film, one meltdown, one studio gone. Murder by Contract. Minimalist, philosophical, and practically invisible when released. Murder by Contract is noir as Zen parable. Vince Edwards plays Claude, a hitman who treats murder like a business. Cold, distant, disturbingly logical. Shot on the streets of LA with barely any crew, the film uses long silences, barren interiors, and a hypnotic 3-instrument jazz score to stretch tension like a wire. Director Irving Lerner's framing feels proto-French New Wave, years ahead of its time. Columbia buried it with a limited release, unsure how to sell a noir that lacked action, but bristled with dread. It bombed, but filmmakers took note. Scorsese screened it for De Niro while prepping Taxi Driver. Its DNA runs through Le Samurai and Drive. Today, Claude isn't forgotten. He's the ghost in every cool, dead-eyed loner with a job to do and no soul left to spend. The Hitchhiker. Ida Lupino made history with The Hitchhiker, the first noir directed by a woman. She also made a masterpiece. Inspired by real-life killer Billy Cook, the film traps two fishing buddies in the desert under the gun of a chatty psychopath. It's the rare noir set in blinding daylight, proving you don't need shadows to feel terror. William Tallman's performance as the bored, twitchy killer is bone-chilling. Lupino shot in Mexico with real locals, crediting them by name, a bold move in 1950s Hollywood. But despite her trailblazing work, the film flopped. Maybe it was too tense, too real, too unrelenting. Or maybe it was because a woman made it. Either way, it was pushed aside. Today it's studied in film schools, hailed as feminist noir, survival horror, and a template for modern thrillers. Lupino didn't just survive The Boys Club. She burned a trail through it. And though her film failed on release, it outlasted the noise. Flops aren't always failures. These 15 films challenged expectations, broke rules, and dared to do more. Some disappeared. Others dragged studios down with them. But all have one thing in common: they mattered. Drop a comment with your favorite underrated flop. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more cinematic resurrections.